Hey everyone, I'm your host Cadence, and welcome back to another episode of Project Honesty, a podcast designed for young adults, by a young adult, to gain brutally honest, friend-like advice, as well as provide a platform for young adults to form opinions, color outside of the lines, take a deep dive into current events, and most importantly, have fun. This is Project Honesty, navigating reality with real conversations and diverse opinions. If you haven't already, go check out last week's episode called The Hollywood Veil, the patterns of sexual abuse in relation to fame, money, and power. After Sean Combs, P. Diddy's, arrest in September of 2024, revealing his involvement with sex crimes and illegal prostitution, questions have been raised around what else happens behind the doors of the Hollywood elite. In this episode, I talk about the allegations against Diddy, what happened, and the problems of abuse of power between the rich and famous and the working class. Take a listen now on Spotify and YouTube. Today's topic, we are going to be discussing the dangers of the cosmetic industry. We're going to be going over where the majority of cosmetic materials are sourced, unethical and under-the-table mining practices that happen overseas, the working conditions of cosmetic mines and factories, the abuse and unethical and illegal labor practices, companies that still source their materials unethically, and companies that have worked towards making their products sustainable and ethical. Starting off with the overarching cosmetic industry. As it stands in 2024, the cosmetic industry currently is valued at $103.82 billion American dollars. In data projections, it shows that over a 10-year period from 2019 to 2029, the value of this market is supposed to increase by 22.04% and grow to a staggering $132.35 billion American dollars in value. Multinational corporations like L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Estee Lauder are the leaders of the cosmetic industry, producing the majority of revenue in this sector, specifically when it comes to North American sales. Though these companies find the majority of their sales revenue being produced in the Western world, many of their products are sourced and produced elsewhere. The majority of raw materials that are used in the cosmetic industry are sourced from a few different places, but the main ones are India, Vietnam, Russia, and China. Now, the most popular material that is mined specifically for its use in the cosmetic industry is mica. Mica is not only mined for the cosmetic industry, it is also used in semiconductors in the automotive industry, construction in the plastics industry, oil and gas, and also the paint and coatings industry. Mica, if you haven't heard of it already, is a group of silicate minerals known for their sheet-like structure, and they have excellent electrical and insulating properties. It's also known for its pearly luster, giving it the reason for its heavy use in cosmetics. When it comes to cosmetics, mica is used in things like eyeshadows, highlighters, blush, setting powders, lipsticks, and even toothpaste, but it is used in way more than that. Mica is all around us, whether that's on our face or in our hands on our phone or in the cars that we drive. According to the Responsible Mica Initiative annual report from 2019, China and India were the top producers of natural mica, bringing in and exporting 325 kilotons of natural mica in 2019. When we look at mica specifically in India and where it's mined in India, Jharkhand is the largest producing mica mining community in India. This region also happens to be among the poorest region in India. And we'll get into why that kind of matters in a second. This is where the issue of unfair and child labor appear. So from research conducted in 2022, there was an estimated 33,000 children working illegally in the mica industry, or what is known as the mica belt. I might post a picture of that on the Instagram. I'm not too sure, but I'll think about it. And many of these children work 5 to 6 days per week, up to 8 hours per day. There's also higher rates of child labor in this area, specifically in this industry, because a lot of children in this area have to find a way to support their families, and a lot of the time, and most of the time, they settle for low-paying and dangerous jobs in these mines as a way of doing that. Now, not only are children working in these mines, but there are entire mining families in Jharkhand that all work together in the same mine in the same way to provide for each other. Another big problem when it comes to the Jharkhand region in India is that there's a lack of education due to the fact that these kids aren't going to school and rather they're spending their days working in the mines to provide for their family from ages as young as, I think it was 6 years old, working in these mines. Now, overall, it is actually prohibited to mine mica in the Jharkhand region in India. But despite this, there is some allowances for producers. These producers pay off local authorities in order to use child labor because, as we all can assume, because when children are working illegally, pay is given at unfair or sometimes not even at all rates, which lowers the production costs for the mine owner. Processors of this mica have no code of conduct for the people mining the mica. So you have the miners, which includes child labor, and then it evolves into producers and processors. And I'll get into that in just a second. Now, you might think that manufacturers like L'Oreal and Estée Lauder and these big name multinational corporations who are using this mica have oversight into what's actually happening in these mica mines in Jharkhand. And even in their oversight that they have, which is very minimal, they still do not see the stage where children are involved in the process of mining mica. The process, which is referred to as the mica supply chain, has a couple different levels. So it starts off with small-scale mining. This is in areas like Jharkhand. This is including child labor and other unethical mining practices. Then it gets transferred to thekadars, which are intermediaries who buy within the village, so they buy mica locally. And then after that, it is moved to processing units and factories for people to sort it, size it, and this all occurs in the Jharkhand region. Then after that, it is shipped to Kolkata. After the Kolkata stage, a lot of companies do not know how to pinpoint whether their mica has child labor involved in it or not. It is very hard to track down the origin of where ethical mica comes from after it gets shipped. A lot of companies aren't tracking it down enough or putting in that effort to try to go find where it's from, and rather they're kind of doing this like trust the process thing. And you might be wondering, why is mining mica so dangerous? And why are children specifically at risk? Firstly, a lot of the mica mined specifically in the Jharkhand region is mined in abandoned mines. So they are only being operated on because it's easier to hide the fact that there is child labor occurring, as well as the fact that these older run-down mines are further out in the country, leaving them to be really remote and rarely monitored by authorities, which leaves the producers a lot more room to get away with sketchy shit. While scavenging for mica, most laborers sustain injuries to their hands ranging from minor to life-threatening if infected. More severe health problems include, but are not limited to, tuberculosis, respiratory issues, broken limbs, head injuries, suffocation, and most severely yet unfortunately common, death. A common situation where death occurs specifically when these unstructured abandoned mines collapse and everyone inside is trapped and dies either due to suffocation or the injuries sustained during the collapse. Mining mica is also very dangerous because it's exploiting underpaid and desperate workers. And when it comes to children being specifically at risk in this industry, they are unmonitored in their work in the mines. They are more vulnerable. Now, the thing is, these kids are more than well aware of this danger because it is their reality. I read countless articles about children in these mines, and it's apparent that these kids are no strangers to death being a close reality for them. Many children interviewed from the mines, which in and itself was like a difficult thing to do because I will link a video down below of a Refinery 29 episode that shows how people get to the mines to interview these people because it's a little bit of a sketchy process. So I'll link that down below. But many of these children that are interviewed from these mines have said they have seen their friends and family die in accidents at the mine. Some of these kids even have turned into their own advocates in a sense, based on their trauma that they have seen and faced. At the time, in 2019, a 15-year-old girl from Jharkhand named Ritika Murmu made it her goal to warn others of the dangers children face in mica mines after debris collapsed on her friend, instantly killing her. Not only that, Ritika herself refuses to step foot into another illegal mica mine and continues spreading the message and creating awareness around the fact that these are not safe and that children especially have no place in these mines. The owners are also well aware that deaths are taking place in their mines. But instead of closing down the mines, they pay off the family of the deceased with something called blood money. The payment of blood money is used to secure the fact that these families will not reach out to the authorities to report this illegal and dangerous activity, as well as using this money as a bribe and a vow for these people to keep working in the mines. So we know that mica is dangerous. We know that the mining of mica is most likely unethical. What companies are still using natural mica in their products, and how can they eradicate the use of natural mica? As I said before, it is hard to pinpoint the exact amount of cosmetic companies that still use natural mica. It's all up to how transparent a company is around where they source their products. It's also hard because a lot of large manufacturers, again, so Unilever, L'Oreal, Estée Lauder, are not able to guarantee if their mica in the products is ethical or not. It is very possible that in at least one of the makeup products you own, there could possibly be mica that was mined by an underpaid child. Companies that use the label of or similar to, quote, working towards using synthetic mica are using this as a cover-up for the fact that they still, in fact, use natural mica. And by saying that they're working towards using synthetic mica, it puts a small barrier between them, the company, and the exploited child laborers and others involved in this unethical process. Take Lush for an example. In 2014, they pledged the fact that the company as a whole was pulling out of natural mica use and alternatively switching to synthetic mica. Later, the company revealed the fact that they couldn't guarantee that there was no natural mica in their supply chain. Even though it is more ethical to buy and use synthetic mica in cosmetics, eradicating its use entirely would put the families who rely on that income at risk. This is not to say that this mining should continue. This means that companies should pinpoint the exact source of their mica, create overseas mining standards to ensure that there is safety in these mines, and make sure families and children are getting paid livable wages. And it's not just the company's job to make a change. Consumers should recognize what they're putting on their face, recognize the fact that the mica that they put on their face has a high possibility of being unethically mined, and alternatively should search for better and more ethical alternatives. This was a short episode, but a very important one. I find this very interesting, and I feel like it's a very niche topic that doesn't get talked about a lot, and so I wanted to give that a platform. Again, I'll link the Refinery 29 video in the description below. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Project Honesty. You can find Project Honesty on Spotify at Project Honesty or on YouTube at Project_Honesty. And to keep up to date with new episodes, you can head over to Project Honesty's Instagram, which is at Project_Honesty24. Our TikTok is at Project.Honesty. And we also have a website. The link for that website is in our Instagram bio. And to help spread this podcast everywhere, tell a friend or share with family about Project Honesty, and you can direct them over to the Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, or website to help them learn more. Subscribe, follow, and click the bell icon for updates when I post. And remember, the more listeners, the bigger the family.